Hi there, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for joining me today. My name's Janelle. Today I'm going to be going through my reading wrap up for the month of March with you. So March as a reading month, quantity wise, very good, really good. Quality wise, it depends. There was a lot of hot and cold in that. So, but I'll break that down book by book. In March, I read 7 books. I DNF'd 1. And I decided I would mention the DNF because potentially the issues I had with it, maybe someone else won't. I know this book does seem to get both love and hate on it, but I'll explain my thoughts and feelings, the why behind me DNFing it, and you might hear that and go, oh, none of that would bother me, this sounds like something I would love, and then you've got a great book recommendation. So I'm gonna start with the DNF. So the book I DNF'd was The Third Policeman by Flann O'Brien. I got this book last year, so excited about it. I had heard that Hozier had based his songs to Selby off of a character in this book. I should have known by its description it was not for me, because it's referred to a few times as like the Irish Alice in Wonderland, and I don't really care for Alice in Wonderland, so I was already starting at, I probably shouldn't have been. Basically, throughout this book, I don't remember how far I got. I had tried it last year, couldn't get into it, put it down. Picked it back up this month, and within like one evening, I was like, no, like I am miserable, and I should not be miserable. Essentially, I had no idea what was going on at any given moment, and you're not really supposed to know, but I would like to know. I very much so like a tidy, well put together book. Like, I love a book where you maybe don't know what's happening, but you have suspicions, like, is it like this or is it like that? And then the whole web gets like put together in this beautiful, amazing, intricate way. Whereas this just really felt like you're on a trip and not a great one. I read a review where someone was like, you just have to be okay with not knowing what's happening. And I'm like, oh, I'm not okay with that. Like, for me personally. And then another person said it felt like witnessing a conversation with like stuffy intellectuals who find themselves funny and you're just lost in the conversation, and that kind of separation. And I was like, yes, like that is how it feels. It did feel pretty like kind of, I got like pretentious, really is a word that came to mind quite a bit with it. And I've made peace with, I can adore Hozier's music, and we do not need to like the same books, and that is okay. That is okay. Everybody's different. Everyone's unique. That's fine. But for me, I want to just like read for enjoyment and for learning and for growing. But I don't want to be sitting there getting frustrated being like, what is actually happening? So that's why I put it down. I just realized it wasn't worth it for me, but maybe it would be for you. Now, the first book that I read to completion was A Grandmother Begins the Story by Michelle Border. I'm not going to go into too much detail for this one because I have a review up of it, which I will put in the description box below. But this is a book set in multiple different perspectives. Essentially, the perspective changes every page or two, but it is very clear whose perspective it's going to be, and it's not too long in between perspectives, so I didn't find I was forgetting any character's like own story. It was keeping up with itself really well. So I really, really enjoyed this book. I believe I gave it 4 stars. Going off of memory, I believe I gave it 4 stars, but I quite enjoyed it. I really liked the different perspectives. It was different than I expected, but it is about, I believe, 5 generations of Indigenous women, some with the afterlife, some presently like on Earth, and kind of their interconnectedness and a lot of domino effect kind of stuff. It was very, very good. I would definitely, if it's something you're interested in, look into it, watch the review, but I thought it was great. Then I read A Ghost in the Throat by Doreen Negrifa, and this book unfortunately was a disappointment to me. I'd had extremely high hopes for it. I did put a lot of pressure on it. It ended up being a lot different than I thought. Again, I've got a review up for it, but it wasn't what I expected, and I would have preferred what I'd been expecting. I may reread it in the future and get a lot more from it. That's completely a possibility. But unfortunately, that was not right now. So I think I gave it 3 stars. I didn't hate it, but I didn't dislike it strongly. There was elements that I liked, but it was very much a kind of like meh read, more or less. Then I read Fully Alive by Susie Larson. I took, I think, a week or 2 with this one. I used it more so like a devotional, because there are like written prompts and everything throughout. So each morning I would do a chapter, fill in the prompts. And I found this book extremely impactful. It really helped me become aware of my perspective and shift it. It was very good at turning reflections internal, and yeah, I found it quite moving and quite altering and changing for me. So I really, really, really liked it. I got on quite well with it. Normally, when books do have written prompts within them, I wouldn't write within the book itself, but I did with this one. So it definitely started me on a really great healing journey. And yeah, I believe I gave it 4 stars as well. Then I read my favorite book of the month, and probably one of my favorite books of the year so far, which is Moon of the Crusted Snow by Waubgeshig Rice. And again, I've got a review up, a reading vlog with this one, but I loved it. I thought it was extremely beautifully written. The landscape description was amazing. I really, really, really loved it. It was stressful, it was tense, it was emotional, it was dark. It had like an entire orchestra of emotions, and I am really excited to read the sequel. I don't know if I will now in April or in May. I don't want to leave it too long, but I also want to give this one some time to just sit and digest, because the sequel is set years in the future. So it is about a Anishinaabe community who gets completely cut off from the world. Their electricity goes out, it doesn't seem to go back on, so they're on the on the backup generators, and it's how they react to that. So if you like Station 11, Bad Cree, I think you'd like this book. Even Greenwood by Michael Christie, that's one that I was very, very stressed with, but in a different way that this one was. But yeah, I would really recommend this one for sure. I loved it. I thought it was amazing. Then I read Trespasses by Louise Kennedy. So I've had this book for a few years. I believe I got it in 2022, and I was so excited for it, and I just kept putting it off and putting it off, and as the podcast that I love, Books Unbound, would say, it became a mashed potato book. I just kept having such high hopes for it and kept saving it for that rainy day. It was longlisted and shortlisted for the Women's Prize for Fiction last year, so I was going to read it during that time. I didn't. So there's that. I didn't end up reading it, but this year I decided, no, I'm reading it now. It is set during Northern Ireland's Troubles. It follows a Catholic main character and going through the Troubles, going through everything. You're seeing cross community, mixed things between Catholics, Protestants. You're seeing old friends becoming where they old friends, people that they could have counted on, relied on, not being the case anymore. Um, Lots of hate from both sides, both directions. But that's not the main bit of the story. So our main character Kushla is a school teacher, and she enters an affair with a married man, and it spirals from that essentially. And it is emotional, like it gets tense at points. I didn't love it as much as I thought I would. I did really enjoy it, like I definitely thought it was great, but I thought I was gonna, this was gonna be an all-time favorite kind of thing, and it wasn't. But I did really enjoy it overall. And um I think the characters were written brilliantly. I think they were written fantastically. I feel like maybe the scene, like the descriptions of the settings, maybe had a bit to be desired, but I can't really describe in what way. Like, I love it when I'm reading a book and the setting's described and I am like there. And Louise was definitely describing things. Like, you were getting descriptions of homes, of roads, of fields, of everything, but there was just something about it where I was just never there. When there were conversations, I was. So I really grabbed on when she was having her characters interact, because then like I was there for those conversations. But yeah, there was just something where I wasn't quite fully sunk in. So I believe I gave it 4 stars. I did think it was fantastic, really, really well done, but it's not, an all-time favorite or anything. I may reread it in future. But I did enjoy it, and I would read more of Louise Kennedy's writing for sure. Yeah, I thought it was fantastic. Okay, next, I finished a book I started a few years ago, and I put down because it got, to put it extremely lightly, really heavy, and I put it down to take a bit of a break from it, which is a privilege in and of itself to be able to do that. But the book is On Bloody Sunday by Julianne Campbell. And this is a book about the events that happened in Derry on Bloody Sunday, on the 30th of January 1972. So, this is nonfiction, and the way it was put together was incredible. Um, and I quickly understood when I picked it back up why I'd put it down in the first place, because it's just horrific. It's just plain and simply horrific. That's just the fact of the matter. And there was just so much to take in and to digest, and you're made so aware that, like, I have the choice of reading a little bit and putting it down and walking away and coming back to it and carrying on with my life, right? Whereas these families that went through this group, they don't have this choice, this entire community. And it's been with them for decades and decades, because their family members, their husbands, their sons, their children, their brothers were made out to be people that they weren't. They were made out to be the villains, and they were the victims. And it was such an ongoing fight to clear their names, and one name still needs to be continue to be cleared. I did give it a rating on Goodreads for the simple purpose that I think it was brilliantly done. And I think, I know there's people who, when they're gauging whether or not they should get a book or read a book, they look at the average rating. So if I read it and I rate it and that, helps it out, then that should be done. But I want to make it super clear, my rating isn't a commentary on the trauma that this community went through, because I think that would be wildly inappropriate to put a numerical value on this horrific trauma. More so, I think of it, the numerical value I put on it is how it was researched and presented and written and delivered. I feel similarly about memoirs. You know, I don't like rating them for the purpose that I don't like to put a numerical value to someone's life. I don't agree with that. But how it is like written and delivered, so not the story itself, but the formatting more so, like the structures, that's where I will do that. I did give it 5 stars. And, you know, not in my normal, like my normal 5 stars, like all-time favorite, recommend to everybody. Like, no, that's not. I think they can have different meanings because this was incredibly done. It was so well researched. Well, the author is a relative, I believe a niece of the first person killed on Bloody Sunday. And it's just, it's so important and it is so well done, and I do think it should be widely read. I think like I said, I think it's extremely important. It is really hard to read, hard to digest. Like, I know when I was reading it a few years ago, we came across this video. I don't remember if it was a music video. It might have been for U2's Sunday, Bloody Sunday, potentially. Or it might have been for a movie. I can't remember, but you saw, I believe it was a reenactment. Yeah. But it was crazy because this is described so well. I could tell um who was running where and who that was and everything. And in the back there is a section for the speakers. So because it's just full of interviews, it is mainly interviews telling the story. And so you can go in the back and it will tell you the speaker, who they were related to, how they were, you know, involved with this day. And then there's another section for the deceased and the wounded. So I found that out just after picking it back up this time, and that really helped keep me straight on who was who, and you know, so I was consistently flipping back to that area and looking, so that really helped me keep track of everything. But I definitely recommend this book. Definitely exercise caution because it was, you know, a mass murder. So it's obviously a very hard and heavy topic, but that definitely doesn't diminish or take away how important it is and how everybody should be educated about it. So, yeah, that was on Bloody Sunday. And then the last book I read, I very literally almost did not finish in March. I finished it at about 10:30 or 11 p.m., I believe, and it is Old God's Time by Sebastian Barry. This is the first book that I read by Sebastian Barry. It is about an elderly man, a retired police officer, who lives in a castle on the coast in Ireland, which is what sold me on it. I was so excited about it when I read that. And he is approached by some young policemen in the same detachment he was a part of about this cold case. So I went into it with the assumption that it would be him basically picking up this cold case again and working with them and kind of more or less coming out of retirement to figure things out. That isn't what happens. It was a very... I can be pretty honest and say, if this hadn't been like a beautiful edition, like the Kenny's exclusive edition, that I'd been really excited when I'd ordered and everything a couple years ago, I probably would have DNF'd it. Like, I can pretty confidently say I would have DNF'd it. I'm glad I didn't in the end. The last 60 to 80 pages really pulled me in. But is that enough when it's a 260 or more but it was 260 odd pages. Is that enough? That only that small segment at the end grabbed me. There were things that surprised me along the way. It's more so, you know, a look at this older gentleman who is reflecting on his life, those he's loved and lost. And you can see he's getting confused. There's things happening. He's having conversations with people, and are those people actually even there? Um, and his love for his wife is beautiful. His love for his wife is just the most beautiful thing. It has a focus on childhood traumas. And you learn he's been through a lot of tragedies of his own. Um, and I think maybe I would have enjoyed it more had maybe it could be me, if I'd been more in the mood for it. I picked it up and the first few pages really grabbed me, but then as it's kind of was stepping away from what I thought it was going to be, it started to lose me, and I did have the urge to put it down. But I feel like, and not even I feel like, I know 100% had I put it down, I would never have picked it up again. And I'm really trying to stop myself from that. So I was like, just motor through here. I did borrow the audiobook from the library, and that helped because you could really, the narrator was fantastic at expressing like emotions through his voice. So I think that helped, you know, get out of my head and into the book. I think the book had a big potential for like a huge plot twist, and I kind of kept hoping for that and waiting for it, and the plot twist in the direction I was thinking never happened. Granted, though, as far as I can remember, all the Irish literature I've read so far is very much so just like based on monotony, like the mundane of the day to day. And I tend to quite enjoy that. And in that case, it makes sense that there's not a big, huge plot twist. But yeah, it was a little lackluster for me. There was definitely like interesting points where I was like, wait, what? And you know, there's definitely moments that like gave me pause, but it wasn't one that I like loved and was floored by. It's definitely another like meh. Like I said, the ending really picked up for me, and I was getting more pulled in and intrigued at that point, but at that point it's a little bit too late. So I gave that one 3 stars. It was fine, you know, and I could totally see other people loving it, and even on a reread, there's a possibility I may enjoy it more, but do I see myself picking it up for a reread? No. No, I don't. So that's what I mean. I normally don't read this many books in a month, so that was great for me. I actually finished my Goodreads goal. I set a goal of 15 books because I had no idea how my reading year would go. So that's awesome that I did, but I would rather quality over quantity, and Moon of the Crusted Snow was amazing. I'm really happy I finished on Bloody Sunday. That was something that was important to me. But yeah, the rest was kind of a little lackluster. Um, so there's that. But anyway, let me know if you've read any of these books. I also wanted to double check before I interrupt myself. The Irish Readathon happens in the month of March, and I was curious because I didn't like specifically plan my reading around it, but I thought it'd be cool to focusing on reading Irish books throughout the month. So one of the prompts, just to see how I did, even though I wasn't like actively doing it, read a green book. Yeah, well that works because A Ghost in the Throat has green, Trespasses has green. Yep. Read an Irish children's book. Nope. Read an Irish book related to the number 7. Also no. Read an Irish book fulfilling one of the cover prompts. And the cover prompts are animal, food, house, books, people, trees, transport, fantasy element, and stars. See, A Ghost in the Throat, I would like to say for trees because it has foliage, like it's a bush, I believe. But I don't know if that's cheating. Trespasses has a human. Like, it has people, and that's probably not the corner of her house, maybe the corner of a school or something. essentially the corner of the house. So definitely, like, between A Ghost in the Throat and Trespasses, I've got 2 prompts covered. Read an Irish book in your favorite genre. Old God's Time, I don't know if that counts as historical fiction. You kind of aren't really aware of if it is modern day that it's set. It refers to the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, so I'm not sure exactly when it is set. I do often say historical fiction is my favorite genre, but definitely 2 of the prompts covered, so that works. But anyway, those are the books that I read in March. Let me know what books you read, if you had any new favorites, or if you've read any of these or have any questions about them. And I will see you in my next video. I hope you have a great April. Thanks for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.